this little leatherback will have to face
the most deadly obstacle course in the world
before it returns as an adult to this beach where it hatched.
without falling 200 feet to the ground.
Good luck, little leatherback.
What on earth do David Attenborough and Mr. Beast have in common? They're two of the world's greatest content creators. Whoa, hold on a second. Calling Mr. Beast a content creator, sure, but calling the great Sir David Attenborough
How do you do?
a content creator? That feels almost disrespectful. But regardless of what your stance is on that title, I think that David Attenborough is the best one. And to prove it, there's 3 very specific things that I think his documentaries, as well as his entire body of work, do so well that all content creators should take note and start applying to their own videos today. When you think about what connects us to a video, it might be really easy to say, the people. It's why viewers are willing to spend hours watching their favorite creator just sitting at a table, or why Mr. Beast puts contestants through crazy challenges. It's because they know we connect with people, right? Well, if that's true, then why is it that me and so many other people connect with documentaries like Planet Earth, where the subjects are plants and animals? The secret is that we don't connect with people, we connect with stories.
I think stories and storytelling is a very important part of program making. You have to be very clever to do a program with no story at all.
So the question is, how does David Attenborough tell a story? For most people, the first thing that comes to mind is his iconic voice and his narration style, which has become essentially synonymous with documentary filmmaking. So it was really surprising for me to find out that this is the one thing that David Attenborough tries to limit the most.
You were putting films together. Your aim was to have no commentary at all. What you wanted to do was the pictures to tell the story, because they could. All you had to do was to restrict your words to bits of information that were necessary to understand the pictures.
Learning how to let your pictures tell your story is a process that never ends, no matter how good of a filmmaker you become, but there's plenty of practical ways to start doing it better. Having well-composed shots so as not to confuse your audience as to what they're looking at. Using direction as a substitute for right and wrong. A character moving from right to left is perceived as regressing backwards, while the same shot from left to right is perceived as progressing forwards. By the way, these are concepts that the best YouTube creators understand as well. But the true superpower that David Attenborough displays is his ability to infuse meaning into shots, because it's a blank canvas until you have context. This shot of a flamingo could be searching for food in the water, or it could be sadly walking away after losing a fight with another flamingo. Both could work. The context isn't there until you put it there, and this is where narration becomes so powerful. A subtle little turn of the head could be just bored looking around, or it could be seen as mentally preparing to run away from a predator. But if you really just want one thing to focus on, be sure to establish the stakes that exist for your character. The extreme example of this is making it very clear what possible prize you could win in a competition, both by speaking it and by showing it in big bold letters. David Attenborough does the same thing, but he has a little bit of a different approach.
This little leatherback will have to face 1,000 hazards before it returns as an adult to this beach where it hatched. And those dangers will be greatly increased because of damage that we have done to the oceans. Good luck, little leatherback.
By simply establishing what's at stake, something as simple as a turtle walking across the beach is now infused with suspense and drama. It's now created a story for us to follow. What a story does is transforms these beautiful, picturesque shots into something that you and I can actually resonate with on an emotional level. And being able to do this for plants and animals, in my opinion, makes David Attenborough one of the greatest storytellers around. But telling a story alone isn't enough, because if you don't have this next piece, your story risks completely falling apart. If there's one thing that I've learned from watching the work of Sir David Attenborough, it's that he's obsessed with making sure that information is presented clearly. And I don't think there's a better example of that than the tennis ball. Fun fact, did you know that David Attenborough is the reason why tennis balls are yellow? Up until 1972, tennis balls used to look like this. They were white, which wasn't really a problem, right up until it was. See, in 1967, BBC Two started showing color in its broadcasting, and one of the first places they started to do this was in tennis matches. This was an incredible step forward, apart from one thing: people had a really hard time seeing the ball. So instead of tweaking the cameras and figuring out a technological solution to this problem, the head of BBC Two at the time pushed for the ball to be changed from white to a neon yellow, which would eventually be introduced in 1972 and given the term optic yellow. And you might have guessed it already, but the person who was at the head of BBC Two at that time was none other than the great, not yet Sir, David Attenborough. It's a cool story, but why is it important for filmmaking and content creation? What I love about the tennis ball story is that it highlights a really important filmmaking principle, but it does it in a way that I think gives it more applicability. You might have heard the term before, killing your darlings, and what it means is getting rid of something from within your story, your film, your piece of art, that you might really like and really want to keep, but it doesn't serve the overall larger story that you're trying to tell. And this is especially true for nature documentaries, because sometimes you might spend days, weeks, or even months just trying to get one particular shot. But if it doesn't end up serving the overall story, you have to be willing to get rid of it. And this might mean getting rid of almost all of your work.
So that what you left on the cutting room floor is maybe 90% of what you shot, but it's not as good as the 10% that you showed, so you might as well chuck it away. There are occasionally sequences in which you actually get a very good sequence, but in the end, the overall package of the film, there's no place for it. The film would be too long.
But what I think is so special about David Attenborough is that he expands this concept not just to the storytelling, the writing, the editing, but to every single element of the production. Anything that's a given or anything that's held sacred is willing to be given up if it helps tell a clearer story. When he was broadcasting tennis matches, even something as essential as the ball that you're playing with was up for discussion in order to make the story of the tennis match clearer to the audience. And even in this particular video that I'm making right now, I had an entire section where I created a 3-minute fake documentary in the style of David Attenborough with puffins and sound effects and beautiful music and a story behind it, but it detracted from the overall larger story that I was trying to tell. And so if I wanted to be even a fraction of the storyteller of David Attenborough, I had to be willing to let it go. I would argue that Sir David Attenborough has done more for the environment than this person, or even this person.
How dare you!
Regardless of your stance on the environment, the reason his message about saving the planet is so effective is because it's structured like a good call to action. That might sound stupid, but it's actually a lot more true than you might think. No matter what kind of video you're creating, we all have something that we're trying to convince our audience of. If you're filming a serious narrative drama, there's usually an underlying message or moral that you're trying to get to your audience. And we've all heard an ad read or a call to action at the end of a YouTube video. Go check out my website, download this thing, buy my merchandise. We're even telling something that's really important to them, but it's not really important to you. But when you hear David Attenborough say that,
"It will take many years to recreate anything as rich as the woodlands that we once had, but surely it should be our target to do so."
This has come at the end of 40 minutes of beautiful imagery and stories about the complex, wonderful ecosystems of our planet. Him telling you that the environment is important isn't just something he's trying to convince you of in that 30-second speech, because he's already convinced you through the course of the documentary. The documentary was the call to action.
I've always believed that few people will protect the natural world if they don't first love and understand it.
And so a gentle prompt telling you that nature is important to him and it's worth preserving feels really powerful, even with a gentle touch, because all of the work and heavy lifting was done beforehand through the course of the entire video. It shows you how beautiful the Earth is, and so when he says that it's worth saving, you already agree with him. And so there's no need to yell at you or scold you to try to convince you.
You don't turn on a television program and say yet again, it's all your fault and you're destroying. That is not the way in which you actually get support for the sort of cause which I think is crucial for the world.
But the cherry on top, the final reason for why this is so effective isn't because he's a great salesman or an incredible speaker. It's because he's just telling you what he actually thinks.
I simply was recording what I saw, what was there, and I wasn't putting any particular bias on it. I was just witnessing it. And I wasn't trying to load it one way or the other. And therefore, it's true, it's honest, and it's not trying to sell you anything.
I don't care who you are, what your platform is, or what your niche is. What the work of Sir David Attenborough shows us is that the way to elevate your videos is by giving your viewers a story to connect with, by being willing to cut out anything that distracts from the clarity of that story. And your audience is much more likely to agree with the message that you're giving them if you put in the work and actually convince them through the video itself. And if you think that I've managed to convince you that I'm right through this video, then give a shout out to Motion Array, because their stock footage, royalty-free music, templates, effects, transitions, and plugins are what I used to make this entire video. I've left a link in the description below to all of the assets that I used in this video, but in the words of the great and powerful Sir David Attenborough,
I've had the most extraordinary life, exploring the wild places of our planet and making films about the creatures that live there, to form the most marvelous of all stories, the history of life.